Hey, well, I got the old Camaro subframe cut out, and I've got the new one roughly mocked up and set in place. And I played around with this thing a little bit as far as trying different ride heights and scooting it forward and back. And here's what I found worked for me. What I did is I had to cut my frame off. I don't know if you can see exactly 2.5 inches or so forward from where it flares out for your cab mount. In my case, I had to cut the frame completely off at that point because when the last Camaro subframe was installed, they made such a mess of the frame rail that anything forward of that wasn't salvageable. I will say, if I had a situation where I was working with a truck that's never had any sort of graft done before, the biggest thing that I would definitely do differently is I would still go ahead and cut the top and bottom of the frame rail off across at 2.5 inches, but rather than cutting the upright off, I think I'd leave like an extra 6 inches or so of that, and what I would do is I would heat that portion up and I'd flare it out. And doing this, it would create a nice transition because the Camaro subframe's wider, so it looks, yeah, as you can see how it's choppy right now. That's something I'm gonna have to clean up, and I'll fix that up a little bit later. But it'd be nice. It'd be a nice way to transition it and leave you a nice seam so it looks seamless, like it's never been grafted. But at any rate, enough of that. When I get everything off, I'll fix all that up, and it'll make sense once the body's off and I show that. But here's what you got to do. Your first step to get this frame to fit inside the truck. Your inside dimensions of a Chevy truck frame is 33 5/8 inches. Okay. Ironically, which is really nice, is if you look at a Camaro subframe where they graft the two pieces of metal when they make this together. I don't know if you can see that or not. Right along here, the inside dimension from this to the other side is 33 1/2. So it's just under 33 5/8. And realistically, you're not going to want a tight fit because it's not going to be square, and you're going to have to wiggle it around. So what I did was I took where the frame rail comes down, and I don't know if you can see that little pinch right there. That's where it starts to rise up, and then it gets flat. Go just behind that, and I cut it off. I cut it off just behind that, and then I just took a cutoff wheel and I ran right on the inside line of that seam to keep your frame nice and centered, and cut the rest of it off. And then I shortened the back of it up by 6 inches because if you have too much material back there, what I found was it's kind of hard to square everything up. This is just a crude starting point. Once you do that, you can slide your frame in. I put a control arm and stuff on there. I put a fender on the truck, and I mocked up where I wanted it to be. Once I was happy with that, I did a very temporary tack weld just to sort of hold the things in place. Okay, so that basically gets the frame under the truck. Your next problem you're going to encounter, I put all my sheet metal on, and on the stock frames, the ears flared out, and this is going to interfere with your fenders. What I did for now, and I'm going to clean this up and make it look a little nicer later, but what I did for now is I came right where the frame transitions and the ears start to flare out. I took this pinch mark, came forward 1.5 inches, and I cut it off. And it's real simple. Just draw yourself a straight line across, cut that, and then I took a plumb bob and I dropped it down. That gives me my uprights. Cut those off. And then the next thing you want to do, if you notice on the factory frame, it sort of flares out at the top and bottom here. On the bottom portion, you need to grind that little nub off, and that's going to make sense in a minute, because what we're going to do is we're going to make some mounts that attach your core support to the frame. And this is what I came up with. Took a piece of scrap angle iron, and I'll show you the steps on one, and I came up with something like that. And here's how it works in a nutshell. I started out with a regular piece of angle. I just rough cut it 3 inches wide, gave me room to work. Once I did that, I took the piece of scrap and I just simply laid it against that flat edge to the core support. I transferred my hole to that. That gave me my positioning, and I drew my lines of where this needs to be cut. Once I did that, I drilled it out. And what I did is when I drilled this out, I oversized this hole. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to recycle the original body bushing that was from the Camaro. And I made this a little loose for alignment purposes. And that's just going to fit right in there like so. Okay. So now you have a simple, straightforward core support mount. Next thing you do, it's kind of self-explanatory if you can imagine. This piece here, you got your bolt, lay your bushing, and then what I like to do is, I'm not assuming that my panels are straight, so add a couple of washers. The reason for the washers is when you do your final alignment of your body panels, you can always add shims, but if you weld this thing up too high, you're going to probably get frustrated and be grinding on a bushing. Okay. So now you see that, you kind of see what I did over here. I'm going to put them on the frame, tack weld everything, take the sheet metal off and stay tuned. All right.